Hi everyone, my name's Scott.
And I'm Sarah.
And we're from ColourSpace. In today's episode of Take 5 with Art, we ask the question, is the whole greater than the sum of its parts?
So today we're looking at Pseudo Ego 2, which is a portrait by Mark Cowell. This is a portrait that I have to admit, when I first saw it, I found it quite a difficult piece. It's really thick paint, it's clashing colours. I can see that this is a portrait, and I can see that there's actually quite a sort of beautiful portrait of a girl underneath those layers, but it is covered up with some really thick, scraped back layers of purple, greenish browns, and pinks. So initially, my reaction to this painting wasn't love at first sight.
So that's really interesting because for me, I actually kind of quite like this piece to begin with. And the reason is actually kind of cheesy, kind of simple. It's because I'm quite drawn to that one band of pink, and for me, it gives this portrait a sense of almost tribalism, or some sort of a neon tribalism where there's this, like a marking on the face, and that actually was quite interesting for me.
That's really cool. I hadn't thought about it in that way. To me, this was quite a jarring piece, the colour scheme and the obliterated portrait. It wasn't something that I could get into straight away.
So if we come back to the question I asked at the start of this video, which is, can you appreciate the whole greater than the sum of its parts? This is actually a really good artwork. That's a good example of that, because this is part of a much bigger series of works.
Yes, it is. So what we've looked at here is Pseudo Ego 2, but like Scott says, it is part of a whole really big series of portraits that actually tracks the story of a person looking in the mirror several times throughout the night over a series of binge partying evenings. So we get to see facial expressions, and the quality of the surface of the painting changes throughout that series.
And when we looked at number 1 of this work, so it reminds you of a bit of almost like a Greek or Amazonian princess. And then as it goes through the series, you can see that it actually can, some of these portraits can actually get quite dark as well.
Absolutely. But the earlier pieces, so the one that you brought up before, Pseudo Ego 1, it's got a really beautiful softness to it. The large size means that there's this monumental scale, this big, beautiful, almost goddess-like creature, that even when we look at the details and the surface of that painting, so we can see where bits of paint have been scratched off it, but it doesn't take from that soft, beautiful quality of the portrait. It gives it an edginess, but there is something still aesthetically really beautiful about it.
So what I'm really reminded of when looking at this entire series was that fact that when we first only looked at Pseudo Ego 2, we had sort of quite different opinions, but when we looked at the entire series as a whole, it came together in a very different way. You start to appreciate an artwork in context of the entire series. And so it's just one of those really interesting things where sometimes you do need to, not be fixated on one point. You need to look at the entire series in order to really appreciate something. And it's also just a reminder that sometimes we also need to, if we see just one part of something, it's sometimes worth asking, is that it? Or is there parts that we are missing? And so that's time. We hope you enjoyed looking at Pseudo Ego 1 and the broader series with us. Otherwise, if you want to look at this series a little bit more, hit pause in just a second. If not, get back to work.